There's a moment in life when you realize the person who smiled at you the longest was the one sharpening a knife behind your back. I never thought I'd be sitting in a police station at 34 years old, my hands shaking around a cold paper cup of coffee, trying to explain to a detective how my own sister had used my signature to destroy everything I had built. But here I am. And if you'll stay with me for a little while, I'll tell you every single detail. My name is Lila. I grew up in a small, tight-knit family. Just my mother, my younger sister Nadia, and me. My father passed away when I was 12 and Nadia was only 8. From that moment on, I was the one who stepped up. I worked after school. I helped my mother with the bills. I became the older sister, the protector, the one who stayed strong so everyone else could fall apart. And Nadia, she was my world. She was funny, charming, the kind of person who could light up a room just by walking into it. I put her through college. When she struggled with rent in her 20s, I covered it without hesitation. When her first relationship broke her heart, I stayed up until 3 in the morning listening to her cry on the phone. I never once asked for anything in return. Because that's what family does, right? You give without keeping score. By the time I was 32, I had finally found my footing. After years of working 2 jobs and squimping every penny, I had saved enough to... She didn't make a mistake. She made a plan. And I was always the most important piece of it. I called Nadia the moment I hung up with the detective. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept telling myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe her business partner had done this without her knowledge. Maybe Nadia was a victim too. Maybe this was all some terrible misunderstanding. She didn't answer. I called again. And again. The third time it went straight to voicemail. That's when the first cold, quiet thought entered my mind. She knows. I drove to her apartment. Her car was gone. Her neighbor, an older woman who had always waved at me warmly, opened her door and told me Nadia had packed bags the week before. She had seemed rushed, happy even, like someone leaving for a long vacation. I sat in my car in that parking lot for what felt like hours. Over the next several days, the picture became devastatingly clear. I met with a lawyer, the first of many agonizing appointments. He explained what I had actually signed. It wasn't just a vendor co-signature. It was a co-directorship document. On paper, I was listed as a founding director of Nadia's company, which meant I was equally responsible for every contract it had ever entered into. "You are liable," my lawyer said, his voice careful and measured. "Criminally and civilly. Until we prove you had no knowledge of the fraud, your assets, including your business, could be frozen." My business. The thing I had spent a decade building with my bare hands. I went home that night and sat on my kitchen floor and just broke. Not the kind of breaking where you cry and feel better afterward. The kind of breaking that happens quietly, deep inside, where something that used to be whole just isn't anymore. But even in that grief, I started to think. I started to remember things. Small things I had dismissed at the time. The way Nadia had been oddly specific about which document I should sign. The way she had shown up with everything already prepared. No waiting, no back and forth. The way she had gently discouraged me from reading the fine print, saying, "It's just legal language, Lila. You don't need to stress yourself." She had planned this. Not impulsively, not carelessly. She thought my love for her was a weakness. She was wrong. It was the thing that made me absolutely fearless. The first thing I did was stop grieving and start documenting. I went back through every text message, every email, Every voicemail Nadia had ever sent me related to the business. I found more than I expected. She had been careless in her confidence. She never imagined I would fight back. There were messages where she described the vendor arrangement in terms that clearly showed she understood its implications. There was even a voice note, from a casual conversation months before I signed anything, where she mentioned that the account would be protected because it was under someone else's name. Under my name. I handed everything to my lawyer and the detective who had first called me. They were, frankly, stunned by how much evidence existed. Within weeks, the investigation shifted. My cooperation, combined with the documentation, built a picture that was impossible to ignore. I was a victim who had been deliberately deceived. Nadia was not. Finding her took time. She had moved, first to another city, and then, when investigators began closing in, she had apparently tried to cross into a neighboring country. But she had underestimated one thing. She had left a financial trail. Credit cards, hotel bookings, a phone still registered in her name. When you run with $60,000 of stolen money and a false sense of invincibility, you are not as invisible as you think. She was arrested 4 months after that first phone call. I was not there when it happened. I didn't need to be. But I was told she cried, that she asked for me specifically, told the officers to call her sister, that her sister would explain everything. I want you to feel the weight of that for just a moment. Even in her arrest, she was still reaching for me as a lifeline. I didn't go. The legal process was long and exhausting, but the outcome was clear. Nadia was charged with fraud, forgery, and financial deception. I was formally cleared of all liability.